So Alex Gartman, I first got to know Alex as a very young land care officer from Western Australia who applied for the CEO position of the Birchup Cropping Group. And we were in those days a very, very small group. We had quite a lot of members, but we were a relatively small group in terms of our research effort. And Alex was with us for 10 years and the group changed dramatically. We are now one of the largest farm groups, well, if not the largest farm group in Australia. We employ 22 staff, which doesn't sound like a lot for you, but I can assure you in Australia that is actually a fairly large business to be running. And the success of our group was really because of Alex's drive and her ability to work with people. And that's her main topic this morning, is communication and working with people. Alexander Gartman.
That was a very lovely introduction. Thank you very much. I'm exceptionally honoured to be here and to be broadcast through your wonderful global network. So thank you very much for the invitation on my holiday to come and interact with the prestigious scientists of ICRISAT. Now, if I may, I'm going to talk a little bit about community engagement, community development, and some of the partnerships and the people that actually take science to reality. So all of the work that you are doing, turning that into a practical application. Briefly, I will talk about community development, highlight 2 case studies, successful stories, and one is the Birchup Cropping Group that you've heard a little bit about from Harm, and the other is the Foundation for Rural and Regional Renewal that I am currently the CEO of. And right up front, I just do want to say that some of the ingredients for success, and I will talk about these, include rigour, relevance, and relationships. The rigour in that the science in what you do and the science in communication and extension is of the utmost importance. What we do well, we do exceptionally well, and we make sure. Relevance, to ensure that the work that you are performing is relevant to those that you are aiming to serve and support. And relationships, to ensure that the work you are doing actually has an impact and leaves a legacy, because it's about the relationships and the people. We'll touch briefly on entrepreneurs and the importance of entrepreneurs in the science community, in the private sector, and within community. And we'll talk about leadership, because one leader is useless. If Peter did not have you behind him, picking up all of those great ideas and implementing those ideas, then his leadership will leave no legacy. And it was the same with me at the Birchup Cropping Group. Without scientists like Harm van Ries and the community leaders, nothing would have changed. And I'll also talk about partnerships and critically about communication, because communication is what helps to disseminate knowledge, and you are in the business of knowledge production and should also be in the business of knowledge dissemination. So community development, of which the Birchup Cropping Group, the Foundation for Rural and Regional Renewal, and ICRISAT are really focused on community development, which is about the collective action of people coming together to generate solutions to common problems. So you are one group collaborating with government, with the private sector and donors, and with the farming community and agribusiness in order to achieve change and address those common issues of food and water security. At FRRR, one of the mandates that we follow is that communities with strong leadership, plentiful social connectedness, and well-functioning local organisation have the greatest well-being. And when you have good well-being, you are more likely to be open to new ideas and have the capacity and the confidence to implement change and to adopt new ideas. Now, we all know that people respond to different things, and underneath stakeholder 1 and 2, I've hidden it, but it says male and female. You choose which one, but your button that gets you excited will be different to my button, or the person sitting next to you, or the farmer or the government official that you are collaborating with. And so it's really critically important in the work that you do and the partnerships that you form that you are delivering and engaging on a number of different platforms to ensure that their button is pushed to be excited and engaged with the work that you do. And this approach of ensuring that lots of different platforms and buttons are pushed was critically important to the success of the Birchup Cropping Group. Now we also, in Australia, there is a trend for engagement in groups, and at least 32% of the Australian farming population is involved in an agriculture-related group, and often they are the private sector and community groups, plus another 20% involved with state government coordinated groups. Why? Why are people attracted to working collaboratively? It's because they are receiving tailored information specific to their patch, and there's power in collective action. So some of these why questions were what drove the Birchup Cropping Group to form and have the power of one common voice in engaging with scientists and government. So welcome to Birchup. You saw some photos earlier from Harum. This is an aerial photo of Birchup in the Wimmera Mallee region of Victoria. As I said earlier, Birchup is really based on rigour, relevance and relationships, and it's fundamentally about people. Now, the Birchup Cropping Group commenced in 1992. It was the first farmer-driven research and development group in Australia and has grown to become the most successful. There were about 500 farmers that were members, and there was a small financial contribution they made to be part of the group, a membership fee. Only produced overall a couple of % of the total budget for the organisation. And then the BCG worked with private agribusiness partners, about 30 private agribusiness partners contributing another 15% of the total operating budget, and the remaining operating budget came from public investments and donors. The mission for the Birchup Cropping Group was addressing and improving the profitability and viability of farmers and agricultural communities via partnerships and collaboration with scientists, government and the corporate sector. So the entire purpose was about extracting the best elements from all of the partners. The key ingredients was bringing those different players together and using the expertise, the local knowledge of the farmers and their innovative approach to trying different things. Bringing in researchers that had that scientific rigour and could critically analyse a particular issue and challenge some of the status quo. And industry that were absolutely crucial in taking some of those ideas and implementing them into the commercial system so that there was a pathway to impact. Now BCG worked across 5 focus areas, focused on production, research and development, very much focused around increasing yield and profit. The second key platform was extension and communication, because increasing yield and production to actually achieve that in the paddock required extension and engagement. Climate was the third platform, climate variability and climate change. The fourth platform was conservation and environment, and the fifth platform was social issues, because we don't want to farm if we have no community, no friends, no local school that our children and our non-working life can be involved with. So here there's a photo of one of CSIRO's leading scientists and a leading farmer in the local area. What Birchup did well was chose the best scientists they could find to work with the local farmers. And they then chose the best communicators to share that scientific information and knowledge. So if you're a great scientist but a terrible presenter, you did not speak in front of the farmers. Sorry, but that was not good knowledge sharing. So you partnered as a scientist with a local farmer and worked with them for the farmer to share in their language to their peer group about your science, because they were often better communicators than the eminent scientists, of course, except Peter. So here we ensured, in terms of the rigour, relevance and relationships, Birchip brought in the scientific rigour to bring to their local farmers. Then they chose great collaborators in industry and the farmers to ensure that whatever the science was, it was relevant to what the issues were for the farming community in this region. And for the farmer, they were able to develop relationships with the scientists and with the collaborators in industry. And so when you have a relationship with someone you trust, you are more likely to believe what they say and consider the adoption of that knowledge within your own business and system. BCG was exceptionally good at industry partnerships. It was giving the industry an opportunity to connect with potential clients and customers to sell their products. But it was also giving credibility to their brand. And we would test their products and test their services, and we're very open to sharing what failed and what did not work. At times that made it challenging to have a really great relationship, because the corporate would like to have always positive messages about their particular products. But in the long term, the relationship benefited by being very, very honest and open about products and services that did not meet the expectations and did not deliver profit and benefit to the farmer. Now, with these corporate partnerships, we had to manage them very carefully. So donor stewardship and partner stewardship, and ensuring that the touch points and the amount we engaged with them and had them really involved in what we were doing on the ground and in the lab was critically important for them to feel part of that process and know that they were a valued partnership and not just a cash contribution and then walk away. So the dictionary says that experience is knowledge and wisdom, but you only get that experience when you have seen something, encountered it, actually experienced it. And we know that knowledge is power. So data alone and science alone, without the application and experiencing how it works, whether it's via a crop simulation model like yield profit or it's paddock trials on your own property, knowledge is ineffective until it's actually applied. And the entire focus of the Birchip Cropping Group was on ensuring that we were giving the farmers very practical, relevant and local experiences and data that made sense to their farming business, and communicating at the right time, in the right format and with the right information was critically important to ensuring that adoption followed and high levels of adoption followed. And that timing was something that we were constantly working with, particularly state government and government partners, to ensure that we didn't waste time getting the information out at the point in time that the farmer needed that information to make a decision. Now, relationships were really critically important, as I said earlier, because we all like to engage with people, communicate, share, bounce ideas and have people listen to us or for us to share our experiences. And Birchip, whilst it was a farmer organisation focused on research and development, the relationships and the communication and knowledge sharing was actually the critical area of operation. Now you'll see up here, this in the top left-hand side is actually a field day in France. We went to France and we saw that the French farmers were having drinks and food right in the middle of their research trials, creating a very social environment. So we came back to Australia and said, we want to make our learning experiences for our farmers social and enjoyable. And so we started to create field days that ensured we had great food, great opportunities for people to interact and engage and create relationships between scientists, industry and farmers. And we employed a lot of young people in agriculture, brought that exciting enthusiasm to seeing agriculture as one of the progressive industries to choose as a career pathway and opportunity. So I challenge you, because we often work with the people we already know. It's easy and they understand us, they talk our language. But we do need to create relationships in other spheres and with people that we may not have a very easy connection with. But I think that's where the benefit of translating science to knowledge and application will be found. So I ask you each over the next couple of years to look at creating a relationship and a collaboration with those who you think at the moment are just a bit too hard or a bit too crazy to work with. So I'll now briefly speak about the Foundation for Rural and Regional Renewal, which is a national organisation formed in a partnership between the Federal Australian Government and a private philanthropic family who believed that investment in rural, regional and remote Australia was crucially important to ensure that each and every community across Australia received the benefits that they could. So the mission is to champion the economic and social strength of those communities, and we do that via partnerships. We partner with 90 donors, high net worth individuals, government and private sector donors to channel their funds and resources and interest into outcomes and resources for rural and remote communities. And we focus on building the social capital. It's great to have science and it's great to have opportunities to improve agricultural production. However, we actually need leaders in agriculture, leaders in science. We need to ensure that we have health and education systems and viable communities. And the work of FRRR is focused in these areas. Some of the programs that we operate across are focused very much on capacity development and engagement. So that funding infrastructure, funding ageing, programs for ageing people, programs to support young people to engage in rural communities and agriculture, education, drought and flood and cyclone recovery, and very much focused around industries and specific locations. So creating long-term relationships with specific communities. Of importance in our approach is that we say we'd like to fund in this area, but we ask the local communities to determine what is their priority and what are their production constraints or community issues they would like us to invest in. And we collect those ideas and match them up almost in a relationship brokering role with the donors who would like to invest in those sorts of outcomes. So it's very much driven by community in identifying their own issues, whether it's within the farming system or within their community. So some of the things that we've funded, we talked earlier about youth in agriculture, but youth in communities more broadly. And in Australia there was a perception that young people were not really focused, they weren't interested in working. They just wanted to take drugs, have some parties, live at home for a very long time. And so we worked with the young people across rural Australia and said, if you want to change the image that older people perceive of young people, you tell us how it should happen. And they made videos and determined the sorts of projects that would make their image and their lifestyle in rural communities more positive for them, not for the older people. We focus very much on supporting skills and education for employment pathways, and that's critically important in many smaller rural communities, is providing people with the right skills and employment opportunities so they don't have to migrate to large urban centres. And sometimes it's the really little things that are important. There's a photo here of a woman standing there with chairs and tables. This community said, we would like new chairs and tables at our community centre so that we can actually bring people together and have the community conversations and work collaboratively to address our local community issues. We don't need lots of money, we just need something small that helps build our own social capital. So I just wanted to reflect now on some of the crucial ingredients that I see as successful for community development, for farmer-driven partnerships, and more broadly for exciting partnership opportunities that will leave a legacy for our communities and our industries. And I keep saying the three words of rigour, relevance and relationships, and ensuring that the partnerships that you form, either within your research teams or externally with donors and collaborators, it's ensuring that you're pulling in the right rigour in the way that you do your work, the relevance to ensure that the issues and the approaches that you are applying are appropriate for the partnerships and for the impact you seek to achieve, and that the relationships, whilst they take time, the relationships and those trusted partnerships will ensure that your work has a legacy and remains vibrant long after you depart from a particular role. Now, entrepreneurship in rural communities is absolutely crucial, because thinking about doing things in the same way will not achieve the change that we seek to achieve. And so one of the key focus areas for both Birchip and also FRRR was supporting entrepreneurial thinking, and not just from the private sector. Entrepreneurs can be in every sector, and they have to be in every sector to drive the change. We talked about leadership, and I will touch briefly on leadership in a moment, but investing in leaders and investing in leadership within the science community, within community and within government and the corporate sector is one of the fundamental investments that, particularly at FRRR, we see as important for Australia more broadly, because a leader and a leadership team can actually see the opportunities, manage the risks and achieve faster scale change and adoption than if you just have lots of people that are nice to each other and follow the status quo. One of the things that I've learned is that all of this takes time. So I stayed with Birchip 10 years, and when you're young that feels like a very long time and you age a lot. But the impact of building those relationships and building year on year on those issues that you're addressing is where we see the step change. It doesn't happen. Step change is rarely in a short moment of time. It is something that we see a trend. And when you take the time to reflect, like we just did, saying 10 years ago Birchip was small, it's the time piece. And when I'm working with donors and investors to invest in community change, it often takes 2 years from the first conversation to seeing an investment in cash or time in addressing the issue. And so the time that it takes to develop relationships and to achieve change can't be underestimated, nor can the resources, Peter. You have to invest the resources. So partnerships and the stewardship of those partnerships was one of the critical success factors for Birchip and FRRR. And those diversity of partnerships is something that, again, I ask you to really strongly reflect on who you partner with and how you're partnering in order to achieve the change that we want. Now, communication, and I know that sometimes communication is often left at the end of a scientific project. We create a hypothesis and we develop the scientific framework and we collect all of the data, and then we think, how do we get this to market? What's our path to impact? How might we communicate? Let's develop a brochure. And I would plead strongly with you that the reason that some of the organisations that I've talked about today have been successful is that the communication and the adoption is considered early, right at the start of the project, and part of the financial and time investment in the entire project is considered at the same time as you budget for your scientific contribution. And we need to be thinking about all of those buttons that make someone excited, because the brochure might hit one button but maybe not the right button to excite the person that you are attempting to achieve change within. Finally, at Birchip, often if we did not have quite the right people involved and quite enough money, we thought, doesn't matter, we're just going to do it, because doing it and demonstrating leadership and demonstrating impact will demonstrate success, and success brings in more collaborators and more dollars. I'm sure many of you know that when you publish and achieve impact through your work, then you actually receive further support and success. So just starting before everything is perfect is one of the successful ingredients, particularly for the Birchup Cropping Group. And to touch finally on leadership, particularly in Australia, some of the key leaders are women. And in many of our rural communities, the people who create the change are generally the women. And the men will grumble and talk, but not always create change and action. And we've found that working with the women and investing in leadership of women in rural communities, crucial to achieving the change. I see there's a few people nodding and smiling around the table. So I just wanted to ask one of the women from rural Australia to say a couple of words. So hopefully this works, and if not, I'll say her words for her. Almost there. So I'll conclude. Well, we'll see. If it works, it works. But otherwise, there's a fantastic farmer from Queensland who has worked with her local community to create a community leadership program and to build the leadership capacity of her community and her industry. And she says, in better words than what I can say, how important it is to invest in our people and our leaders in order to achieve the future for Australian agriculture, international agriculture and communities. But this is not quite the right video, so we may... So we might actually conclude there, and you can jump on and have a look at the link when this gets published with KSI on their website and hear from this fantastic female leader from rural Australia about why it's important to invest in our rural leadership people, but it's coming now. I think we might conclude now and head to... Yeah. I'll now conclude and say thank you.
Okay, thanks, Alex. Okay, is there a few questions for Alex, or just talking about leadership?
Very good and really very interesting. But just one small. You said that you connect to the leading farmers to communicate to the farmers. So how you really encourage the lead farmer to invest his time or her time for this kind of job?
Yeah. So often it's about ensuring that what you're asking them to do is relevant to their own farm business and operations. And at Birchup, we would tap people on the shoulder because very rarely will someone volunteer to stand up and speak and be the advocate for the science and the practice. And so it was time spent between the scientist and the farmer and them sharing that information and helping the farmer understand how it was being applied across their farm business. So it was very relevant, and then they had the confidence to talk about their own farm, and every farmer loves to talk about their farm. So it was combining that passion and that enthusiasm to talk about their own farm business with the science knowledge that they had been sharing with the scientist. So it was part of creating a two-way dialogue between two people and helping them understand that science within the business. Often, initially it was about supporting the farmer in structured field days and workshops to speak, and they would become almost, they're farmer scientists, like what I've heard ICRISAT people talk about. The farmer scientist has the confidence and the scientific knowledge to then share with their neighbours and within their community the great things that the science and the practice is providing for their business and their operations. So they become a natural advocate for the work that you're doing. So part of part of our approach was building the confidence and the knowledge base of an individual farmer and embedding that so that they understood it within their own farm business. And they then became natural communicators outside with lots of other people that often the scientist was unable to reach. Does that answer your question? No, we did not pay them because if we made the information that was for them, that was providing them profit by adoption and relevance to their decision making, they became passionate about sharing that so that other farmers could also benefit. So it was not a paid partnership. It was about ensuring that the information was of such value that they would naturally communicate and share that.
Thanks, Alex. That was really great. And actually, it was interesting that even though we're talking about a totally different country and very different organisations, how the messages can be applied in almost exactly the same way for ICRISAT. I just had a question when you were talking about Birchip and you were representing the farmers. Did you ever get caught up in the difficulty of then a political situation and lobbying or anything like that?
We did at times have challenges with where other people perceived our role and at times they felt we should not be speaking on particular issues. What gave us credibility was that every year we would survey the farmer members to identify their current issues, what they wanted to have research undertaken on, how their own adoption of the research had performed, and we collated that information from all of the local farmers. And we would use that information with funders and donors. We would use that information when determining what research projects to undertake. And we would use that with politicians in lobbying for change to improve the environment for agriculture. So at times we would highlight the challenges of drought on the farming communities and highlight where we felt government and politicians should be investing. And whilst at times, sometimes we would get some pushback from the politicians and the bureaucrats to say that is not your role, you should just stay doing farm-based research. Farm-based research, if your community is suffering from drought and if the government policy is actually hindering adoption of new practice and science, we're wasting our investment. So we did use the knowledge that we generated to influence policy to ensure that then the science had an easier path to impact and adoption.
Okay, please join me in thanking Alex. Okay, so thanks everyone. I'm really pleased to have been able to have Alex and Harm present to you. As I said, they're here on holidays and it was great. They think as part of their holidays they come and see what ICRISAT does. So we went out on the field tour on Tuesday with Rajiv and the team to have a look at the pigeon pea work done at Gulbarga. And so that was really great to drive through the Indian agricultural landscape. It's great that they've been able to interact with people here, and I think there's some time for Harm and Alex to interact with staff here this afternoon. So really pleasing that you see that as part of your holiday that you'll come and see what ICRISAT does and present a seminar. So please join with me in thanking both of them for this. And thank you very much. We've gone a few minutes over time, but that's great. So, see you at the next seminar.